Welcome to Module 3, Picking a Rich Niche. Now this is my absolute favorite because out of all the importance between, your offer, your sales copy, the market that you choose is actually the most important. In fact, there was a professor at a college who said, hey, if you could have one competitive advantage of owning a hot dog stand, what would you want it to be? And people shouted out, I want the best ketchup. I want a proprietary blend of hamburger meat. Location, location, location. And he said, you're all wrong. The number one thing that you want is you want a starving crowd. Because if you place that outside of a restaurant after somebody just got full, it doesn't matter how tasty your hot dogs are, nobody's gonna buy it. However, if you put it right outside the end of a college football game when everyone's starving and ready to go get some more food, they're gonna fly off the shelves. So in this module, we're gonna cover picking a rich niche and making sure that you pick one that has those two requirements that we talked about, the willingness and the ability to buy. Now, when you hear niche, you probably think of the exact same thing I did, which is an industry, right? Accountants is a niche, attorneys is a niche, videographers is a niche, marketing agencies is a niche, and that's actually not a niche. Those are all what we consider industries. My very second tax planning client ever, Ed Lloyd. When we first partnered together, I said, all right, Ed, who do you want to go after? And he said, well, I actually niched down into dentists, right? They make a fair amount of money and they probably also pay a lot of taxes. And I said, okay, great. Let's go after dentists. And that's exactly what we did. Now, when we did that, it worked fantastic. We were getting booked calls with dentists doing over $1 million a year for like $60 per booking. And that lasted for about 7 days before those same $60 bookings started to turn into $300, $400, $800 booked calls. When I looked at it, I was like, what is going on here? So we refreshed some of the creative, we tried it again, and same thing, it was $800 cost per booked call. So I started to look at it a little bit closer. I'm gonna use my calculator here to do some math. I looked up how many dentist offices there were in the United States. And according to Google, there were 166,000 dentist offices, okay? So just to write this up here for us, we got 186,000 dentist offices. Now, Ed said that he only wanted to work with dentists doing over $1 million. Well, if we take that times 0.04, okay, 4%, which is the average amount of businesses who gross over $1 million a year across the United States, that only gives us 7,440 dentist offices who qualify. But there's one more metric that we have to remember here. Not all of these people who qualify are in the market for the services that we have to offer. There's this thing called the buyer's pyramid, which basically states that in every market, a certain percentage, which I will reveal here in a second, of that market is ready to buy what it is that you're selling. Okay, in fact, the number is 3 to 5% of any given market is in the market right now for what you have to sell. Another 10%, give or take, is interested in what you have to offer. 30% don't realize that they need it. 30% think they will, and then 30% for a fact know that they don't want what you have to offer. So if we take that same 7,440 people and we multiply it by the 3% of people who are buying now, that only gives us 223 people who qualify and are in the market right now. Now, the people who are in the market doesn't necessarily mean that they want to buy from you. Remember those 3 things that we talked about? They have to be sold on the vehicle, your unique methodology, and you. Well, they might be sold on the first 2, but they might not be sold on you as the provider. And that's the problem when it comes to picking an industry. You see, we don't want to use an industry, okay, because the industry gets too small. Instead, we want to go after a specific problem. So let's take that exact same scenario. And instead of going after dentists, where there's only 186,000, let's say that we go after service-based businesses. There's 30 million small businesses in the United States. 50% of those are service-based businesses. That's going to give you 15 million people to pull from. Well, now if we go through those exact same numbers, 15 million times 4% gives us 600,000 businesses who are service-based doing over $1 million a year. Now, if someone is doing over $1 million a year and they own a service-based business, we also have to remember that 3 to 5% of them are in the market right now. So we take that 600,000 and we multiply it by 3%, and that gives us 18,000 people who qualify. 18,000 is a much better number of people to market to as opposed to 223 dentists who you will just burn through in about 3 days, as we had to find out. So as you're looking at choosing what niche, not which industry, but which niche do you go after, I highly recommend choosing a problem niche over an industry. Now, of course, there is an asterisk, right? There are exceptions to every rule. For example, maybe you go after professional services. That will be something like attorneys, right? Or financial planners, where there's just a ton of them, right? There's a million of them. But for the most part, we're going to want to stick to our problem niches. Now, how do you figure out what niche to go after? Well, I like to do what's called the 80-20 rule. There's a principle called Pareto's principle that states that 80% of your results comes from 20% of your inputs. 80% of revenue comes from 20% of your clientele. So what I urge you to do, okay, and here's your action item, your implementation item. Look at the top 20% of tax planning clients that you like to work with. The top people, not just based on how much they pay you, but also based on the type of person that they are, right? Because I'm sure you like to work with certain types of people. If they're a pain in the ass, you probably don't like to work with them, even if they decide to write you a handsome check. So you want to go with your top 20% of clientele, okay? Your favorite ones to work with. And what we want to look at is two things in particular. The first one is the demographic. What type of business do they have? Do they have a family? Is it male? Is it female? Okay, are they in a particular region of the United States? That's the demographics that we want to look at. But the second thing that's super important is the psychographics. The psychology that makes up that person. What's their dreams, their desires? What's their story that took them from where they were to where they are now? What's their dreams? What keeps them up at night that you're able to help them solve? Because it's a lot easier when we can talk to the psychographics as opposed to talking solely to the demographics. So if you have no idea what you want your niche to be, who you're going to be talking to, I highly recommend look at the top 20% of clients who pay you the most, who you like to work with, and then do an analysis. What's their demographics? Is it a service-based business? Is it a manufacturer? And then also the psychographics. Who are they as a person? And that'll allow you to pick your rich niche who can pay you what you are worth. And with that being said, that's how you pick your rich niche. And let's get into irresistible offers that can sell themselves.